Today I listened to every single album that Anthony Fantano gave a 0. There are timestamps for my ratings and my ranking of all the albums, so just go to those if that's all you want to see. So the first album I listened to was Kid Cudi's Speedin Bullet to Heaven, and after seeing a lot of stuff I've seen online about this album, I was coming into this one expecting, a little bit worse than Cudi's regular work, but I wasn't expecting something as bad as this really was because, it's Kid Cudi. It's an artist I would say I really like. So I came into this one, expecting something weird, but this album was so bad. It's just so generic, and it's just Cudi went into it and made something that I feel like any 15-year-old who has at least a little bit of music talent could have made on their own, but he just put it out there because, he was in a bad place, but it doesn't really excuse how bad this album is. But let's just go track by track. Edge of the Earth, Postmortem Bedroom. Don't really like the vocals, sound boring. He's just talking over kind of a guitar beat with distortion on his voice. The first half of the song isn't even that bad. It's just so boring. The second half, I like the sound a little more, but it's still more of the same boring, outtakes of a song. Confused, I like the production on this song, but Cudi's vocals and inflection, a lot of lines don't really work and just don't make sense. I actually kind of like this song, but I think Cudi's inflections on this, lot of the lines on this song just stop the song from actually being that good, but I feel like the production doesn't work at parts as well with the beats sounding off tempo. But I think this song probably is the best song on the entire album, which is kind of crazy. Man in the Night, Cudi's voice sounds absolutely atrocious on this song, and the beat does not do anything to help it. This kind of just leaves most of the song to Cudi's vocals. His vocals are just straight talking throughout the entire song. It's kind of just monotone. And then having the Beavis and Butthead skit at the end is also just cringe, calling the album the greatest of all time. Screwed, I like the sound again on this album with the guitar sounding good. The song just doesn't do anything though. It doesn't build and just sounds the same for the exact same 15 seconds throughout the whole song. Fade to Red, I like the sound it comes in with, but the filter they have on Cudi's voice just isn't good. Again, I feel like there's a little build, but the filter on Cudi's voice makes me feel like everything he says is the same. Adventures, I like Cudi's vocals on this as there isn't any weird effects. Even though he's speaking a lot more quietly, I like the sound. The song was good until he said, "Her vag is moist and warm." I definitely think this song is one of the better ones in terms of sound, though. The 1 minute 30-second skit at the end, though, kind of ruins the whole thing with Beavis and Butthead. The sound of the song is okay, but Cudi's vocals are terrible with all the weird vocal effects on them. It literally sounds like a terrible ASMR sequence, which sounds so bad in general as worse on an album. Hey man, I actually like the sound of the song, and I think Cudi's weird vocals kind of work on this one, but there's still parts where I feel like the vocals still sound terrible. Handle with Care, his vocals sound a lot better on this song, as I feel like the filter actually lets his voice shine on the soft guitar beat. Yeah, this is a pretty good song, but the Beavis and Butthead skit is weird. Judgmental C-word, I hate Cudi's vocals on this song, and the production is so basic. His inflection throughout the entire song is just so bad. Seance Chaos, the song is so bad. The drums and production is so boring, and Cudi's vocals are terrible and do not add to the song at all. Fairy Tale Remains, Cudi's voice sounds a lot better on this track, but I don't like the echo voice, and the production is boring, doesn't have any build at all. Wedding Tux, I like the very simple guitar, and Cudi sounds fine in the background of this song, but again, nothing develops on this song. Angered Kids, Cudi sounds absolutely terrible on this song. The instrumentation is so generic and nothing builds at all. His vocals actually sound terrible. Red Sabbath, again, song is boring. Nothing builds or happens, and Cudi's vocals sound terrible. Another terrible Beavis and Butthead skit. Fuchsia Butterflies, there's a really cool transition into this song. This song at least kind of works in terms of sound, as it has cool electric guitar. Speeding Bullet to Heaven, I like the atmospheric sound in the background, the percussion, all kind of works well with the guitar. Cudi sounds okay on this song. Another song that doesn't build up to anything at all, especially a song that's 4.5 minutes long. Ember, the atmospheric sounds with the guitar is okay. I actually like Cudi's vocals a lot on this song. Another song that I feel like doesn't do much while it's actually happening, though. Anomaly, the song just sucks for the first 1 minute, having really weird sounds on the track doing nothing, while the instrumentation actually sounds pretty solid. Cudi's vocals again are terrible. The Return of Chip Douglas, again, this song has a very repetitive sound. It just doesn't build towards anything. He just wails over the track for 4 minutes. It doesn't help at all. Trauma, again, a song it feels like where nothing happens, and Cudi's vocals again sound terrible. Wait, this song again tries to be interesting and cool, but has one of the most boring beats and a very repetitive flow from Cudi, where he comes in with the same flow every single verse. Insides Out, at least this song doesn't have any weird filters on Cudi's voice, but again, very basic guitar production. I actually don't hate Cudi's vocals on this one. They actually sound solid. The song is kind of ruined by the slowed down version of the verse at the end of the song, which actually is I actually laughed out loud when I heard this in the actual song. It was so weird. Speedin Bullet to Heaven demo, The guitar work, again, is really boring, and Cuddy's vocals are so unfinished, and even though they sound fine, he's just mumbling over most of the track. Worth, I like the guitar work a little bit, and Cuddy's voice is okay, but his flow is terrible. The song has a little bit more build, and I actually think it sounds kind of fine, even if the song is really generic. I don't really like the random screaming at the end at all. Melting, the production is kind of interesting with the atmospheric sound of the percussion. I just don't really like the filter on Cuddy's voice, but his auto-tune is cool. In my opinion, this album just is not good at all. I just think Cuddy, this is an album that I feel like it got him out of a dark place, but this is nothing that you actually have to release. Like, even if you do put your voice and feelings into it, this isn't something you have to release and market as an actual album, because as a cohesive piece of work, it just sounds the same the whole way through. You have 26 tracks in an hour and 30 minutes, and basically nothing builds over any song, basically. Like, Confused to me is the best song out there, and I mean, while it is pretty solid, everything else is so much worse than it, because nothing builds on those tracks, and they're all these like 4-minute songs with these super generic guitar beats that, you know, just don't sound good at all. And then there are some pretty solid tracks that do have some like build or good vocals or whatever, and then there's just a random Beavis and Butthead skit on them, which just ruins the track in general. So while this album, you know, I think it got Cuddy out of the right place, he was doing like a lot of bad things at the time, and he was not in his right headspace. It's just not a good album at all, and it's so boring and mind-numbingly boring because these songs sound so similar and have no real instrumentation that could have been, like, the instrumentation could have been done by me if I took a year to learn guitar. Or maybe even less than that, 6 months. I could have done this, but it's just like there's nothing on this album that actually does anything to advance music at all. It's so generic and derivative, and bad generic derivative. It's not like he's doing it and like making it good at least and listenable. It's just super mind-numbingly boring generic derivative. So I'd have to say Speedin Bullet to Heaven. It's a 26 song, 1 hour, 30-minute album with a bunch of Beavis and Butthead skits, which sound terrible, and pretty bad guitar work. I'm going to have to give this a 1 out of 10. It is a little bit better than Fantano's rating, but it's not a good album at all. The second album I listened to was probably the most infamous one on the list, The Big Day by Chance the Rapper. This one really ruined his career, and I don't know if Chance will ever get back to the stuff he did with Coloring Book and Acid Rap because of this album and because of all the hate he's gotten from this. But either way, let's just go track by track. All Day Long, I don't really like Chance's flow at all. It's like too quick, and I feel like you can't really hear his words. John Legend's voice just doesn't work on the super up-tempo beat. It feels like it's moving at breakneck speeds. Some of the lyrics are also just so cringe and sound so funny on a real track. It sounds like one of those TikTok sped-up songs that just doesn't work, and it's not that bad. I just feel like it doesn't really work as a song. Do you remember? The Death Cab for Cutie inclusion is really weird, but it kind of works. I hate Chance's inflection on a lot of the lines, especially when he says hollow and then hello. Death Cab for Cutie's voice just doesn't work well with their inflection. More cringe lyrics and punchlines on the song, especially the 2017 Cubs and Donald Glover lines. The beat is also just so boring. Eternal, I kind of like the production on the song and the little bounce that's on the song. Lots of super cringy lines I think that Chance puts in a boring verse over a solid beat. I hate how the Smino verse also has these cringy lyrics again. Again, none of the first 3 tracks are terrible, just super boring and generic coming from Chance, and really cringy. Hot Shower, the song is just genuinely so bad. The beat is generic, and Chance flow on the song inflection is terrible, especially with the ooze at the end of multiple verses. It's so bad. Main TYO's verse doesn't sound that bad, but the flow and lyrics are just so generic and boring. The Baby just does not sound like he should be on this song. He doesn't fit with his flow at all. We Go High, I just hate the flow and beat on the song. It sounds boring, and Chance sounds bored himself. I hate how he drops so much on each of the rhymes. On the second verse, all the pronunciation lands on the rhyme, and it sounds terrible. The bars on the third verse are actually laughable. I Got You, I really like the sound of the song at the beginning. The song actually is pretty solid, except for literally any time where Chance speaks. The first verse does not work at all and has some cringe lines like the compliments one. The sound of the song is actually pretty good except for the two Chance verses. Photo ops, at least this was a little break from the songs. Rue, he rhymed house with house with house with house. The beat is so boring, doesn't do anything. Taylor at least sounds a little bit better than Chance. The Big Day, I hate this song, doesn't work with the whispering voices to start. The beat comes in with some interesting drums and ambient sounds, but Chance sounds the exact same with the cringe chorus. And somebody randomly comes and starts cussing, which sounds terrible. Francis in the Light at least sounds solid at the end of the song. Let's Go on the Run, I hate Chance's vocals and the obnoxious drum in the background. The song is pretty boring, but doesn't sound terrible. It just doesn't work at all. Don't like how he says hug, hug, hug you. And then it gets bad with Chance's last verse where there are more cringe lines. Handsome, I don't like Chance's flow on the chorus. It's terrible. And while Meg sounds pretty good for the majority of her verse, she kind of sounds bad for the end of it. Big Fish, Chance's verse sounds terrible, and I feel like it doesn't fit the beat at all, and the beat is so generic and boring. I feel like Gucci Mane actually sounds good on his part of the song, though. Ball and Flossing, why is Shawn Mendes on this song? The house beat is really generic, and I feel like Shawn's voice isn't mixed great. Chance's verse and voice is even mixed worse, though, and the Chance lyrics are just terrible and so weird, and then Shawn Mendes just wants to seduce me with his lyrics. Four Chords in the Blacks, another nice break from the music, but this skit is really cringe as well. 5-Year Plan, more bad inflections from Chance and more cringe lines. I don't really like the Randy Newman features as they splice his vocals in a really weird way that sounds terrible. Get a Bad, such a weird transition from the song before to this one. The song generally just sounds terrible with Chance's vocals. The cigarette line is crazy and threw me off. The gospel sample actually isn't that terrible and the production's okay. Cowboys mix in really weirdly though, and I feel like he sounds really bad. Slide Around, I feel like he rhymes around with around, and then he repeats it. I hate his flow and just how he pronounces some stuff to make it rhyme. The song doesn't sound bad, it's just really boring, has some terrible lines. Nikki sounds good for at least the first 5 lines, then she sounds a little bit worse, but still okay. Dirk doesn't sound that good on this song either, he just doesn't really fit it. Sun Come Down, Chance sounds so boring on this song. His flow just seems like he doesn't care at all. Again, terrible punchlines and inflection. Found a good one. I actually kind of like the choir on this song. I like the bouncy beat, but Chance's lyrics are still cringy. The I Ain't Single No More chorus is too repetitive and just a bad chorus. The house beat at the end is also just terrible. Town on the Hill, Chance's vocals are just not meant for singing like this. I do kind of like the production, just with better vocals it could work. The synths on the song are weird and don't work with Chance's vocals at all. Do like the woman's vocals though. Our House, don't like the little kid's voice on this skit. Zanies and Fools, I like Dixon's voice, it sounds pretty good, but the switch up to the new beat is a little weird. The choir vocals are pretty cool too. Chance's lines aren't that bad, but still are a little cringe. I really like the beat on this song, and Nikki actually sounds pretty good on it. Ending the album on a feature, though, is such a weird thing, especially when this album is all about Chance's wedding. So I don't know, that's a little weird. This is such a weird album to me. I don't really think it's terribly, especially sonically. It sounds pretty good. It just gets ruined by Chance's punchlines, and this is an album that maybe Chance should have just made for himself and his wife, because no one else wanted to listen to this. There are probably hundreds of cringier, weird lines throughout this song, and just the inflection on some of them makes them even weirder, and they don't have the same charm that they do on some of Chance's older work, where it like actually kind of fits in with this cool production, and it doesn't seem so forced like it does on this album. This album is basically 80 minutes of Chance bragging about how much he loves his wife, and it gets extremely boring after a while. It's not a musically bad album, but there's nothing really I'd go back to in this album, and it's like I don't want to hear about Chance talking about his wife at all. It's also just such a big step down from any of Chance's older work, where there's just much better production and vocals. His vocals kind of suck on a lot of these songs too. There's kind of a reason why Chance hasn't released an album since this. Chance the Rapper, The Big Day, I'm going to have to give this one a 3 out of 10. The next album I listened to was Green Day's Father of All, and this one was really interesting because this was just such a weird album. Father of All, the first title track. I actually don't hate the instrumentation on this song. It's not like it's a great song, but I feel like it's not that bad. The lyrics are pretty trash, and his vocals kind of suck too, but I actually like the guitars on this song, and it just doesn't sound bad. Fire, Ready, Aim. I feel like this song might be the exact same as the song before, just a little bit worse, with bad vocals and weird lyrics. I think the snapping sound is literally the same one from the one before, and I feel like I don't know if I can distinguish this song, but the instrumental is a little bit worse, but it isn't that bad. It's just a little cringy and weird. Oh Yeah, a pretty generic song with really bad lyrics. Instrumentation isn't good on this one at all. I feel like the vocals have really weird effects on this one. Don't like his inflection on a lot of the lines as well. They just sound bad. I hate the effects in Everyone Is a Star part, as it just sounds terrible. Meet Me on the Roof, another just
pretty generic song with terrible lyrics again and a very annoying echo voice. The song is just generic and boring. The snapping on the song is also so annoying, and Billy's vocals are so boring and bad, but the song isn't that bad. It's just really, really boring. I was a teenager. This one pissed me off because the lyrics have to be the worst on this entire album. It's just them trying to fit in, oh, I was a teenager back in the day, back in my day, I did all this. Come on, bruh. Like, it's so bad, and it's just like, how are you doing, fellow kids? They're trying to fit into something that they're not at all, and I don't hate the sound of the song, but it's not good at all. The vocals are bad. The lyrics are just some of the worst I've ever heard on a song ever. So, I don't know. Stab You in the Heart, more really bad lyrics and a really subpar instrumental. I feel like this one is just weird because it's like a blues rock song. I hate the snapping and clapping on this one, and the guitar sounds so derivative. And I feel like this song is trying to be something that Green Day is not at all. Sugar Youth, this song is pretty bad again, with the lyrics being extremely cringe and the chorus kind of being terrible. The instrumental isn't that bad, but the chorus is just so dumb, and I hate the clapping again. Junking's on a High. This one is extremely melodramatic, and the lyrics really are kind of that same thing. I just hate the super melodramatic sound of the song, and the instruments kind of and the sound of the song don't really work at all. I just hate how it sounds. Take the Money and Crawl, more super weird vocal effects on his voice, and they just do not work at all. I hate the vocal effects on the part where he says, take the money and crawl. They just sound terrible. It would be fine like if they didn't repeat the same thing over and over and over again. They do it like 15 times throughout the song, but the lyrics are also just kind of terrible again and so dumb. Graffiti, I hate the flow of this song. It's kind of just like a call and response type style. I just hate how it flows. It sounds so cheery while being so melodramatic at the same time, which is so dumb. And I hate how it's just his vocals in one of my ear, as well as it kind of is just like talking to my ear, and it's just like he's trying to get in my ear, and it's really weird how it sounds. This song is just pretty bad. I think Father of All by Green Day is a pretty bad album. There's not just bad vocals, there are terrible lyrics throughout the entire album, and the songs just keep on getting worse as they keep going on. The title track isn't really that bad, but I feel like it's still a mid track for this kind of type of album. It's definitely nothing bad though. The rest of the album just goes down into the trash. So they come in with much more worse vocal effects and just terrible lyrics, which is really the main thing about this album. The lyrics are just so cringy and bad with this pretty mediocre instrumentation. It just doesn't work. And it's especially bad when Green Day has been able to make some pretty solid music, in my opinion, in a pretty similar genre. The lyrics just scream that they're trying to fit in with that new wave of MGK-ish music, and doesn't really work at all. The clapping or snapping on a lot of the tracks just reminds me of AJR with the overproduction that ruins a lot of these tracks, adding things that don't need to be on the track. Overall, this album is really just saved by its extremely short runtime, as I feel like it's 25-minute and 10-song length saves it from really being one of the worst albums I've listened to, because everything starts and ends so quickly. Like, if I just listen to the first song, I'd be like, okay, it's a mid song, it's a 5-6 out of 10, but the rest of the album really just brings it down into that, and if they add even more tracks, it'd probably go even further down into that. But I'd have to say Green Day Father of All gets a 2 out of 10. It's really bad.
The next album I listened to was Tones and Eyes, Welcome to the Madhouse. This one is probably, thought of as the worst album of all these, and I kind of agree with that. Let's just go track by track. Welcome to the Madhouse, I just hate her voice on this one, and a lot of the inflections on the track. The sound of the song is also just a little annoying, but it's not that bad. I just hate the dark beat, kind of contrasted with the upbeat beat. It's not really good at all, but I don't think the song is really terrible. Lonely, such a weird transition from the upbeat first song to like a ballad, and then it switches back to that same upbeat sound. It just does not sound good. I feel like it's kind of like a Kids Bop version of a different song where they make it more upbeat. Her inflection on the Shake This part is really weird and sounds bad. And again, another bad song that I probably won't listen to again, but it's not like egregiously bad. Won't Sleep, I hate the intro to this song, and the transitioning voices are just really weird and off-putting. I don't like how everything kind of just moves towards you while Tones continues to change her voice effects on the song. The chorus on this song is so weird and just makes me feel weird. They're just such weird sound changes, transition from different vocal effects and sounds to other different ones. West Side Lobby, I don't really like the vocals on this song, and the production is pretty mid, but it's like a basic
boring, generic song with some weird sound effects. The lyrics are pretty cringe and boastful, but it really doesn't seem like she was ready for fame. The chorus does get so repetitive after a while, and especially with the weird sounds in the background. Fly Away, I hate these lyrics. It's the I don't fit in, I'm such a loner vibes. The chorus isn't good, and the after chorus with the weird house beat sounds bad. It's kind of just generic and doesn't sound good at all. Side songs, more really generic and bad production, especially with the piano. Her voice is kind of like so bad though, and the production doesn't work and it's so over dramatic. This song just reminds me of the bad songs you hear on the radio, but with worse production and worse vocals. Just a Mess, the production is interesting and I don't like it. It moves at such a weird, fast and upbeat pace while also like sounding really sad, and I just hate her vocals on this one. And then switches to a weird different sound during the chorus, which actually sounds terrible. It's such a melodramatic song with such upbeat production. I hate how they try to make this like grand sounding production, and while Tones' vocals aren't terrible compared to some of the other songs, the production is too much while doing too little at the same time. Child's Play, I actually hate the production on this song, and I think the vocal effects on her voice actually suck. The song is actually just repulsive. Her vocals are annoying. The production is terrible. She has such a weird flow, and I feel like everything that happens in the song is terrible. There are a lot of weird hits from the drums, and the baby sound the song has on the production just does not work at all. Not Going Home, her vocals are terrible. I hate the inflection, and the random drop just sucks on this one. I hate the production on this song, and just nothing works with their sound on this song. Dark Waters, this song sucks too. The production is absolutely abhorrent, and whoever produced this does not deserve to be anywhere near a song again. Her vocals are just dog shit, and they remind me of some stuff from Dance Monkey. The lyrics are terrible, and I just don't understand the meaning of any of them, but it's mostly the random effects and Tone's terrible vocals that ruin this song for me. Cloudy Day, I don't like this song, again, with the spacey piano. I hate the choir part of the song with Tone's voice, because you can just hear her voice. This song is just terrible. The production during the chorus is so bad and just terrible to listen to. You Don't Know My Name, I hate her vocals and the weird vocal effects on this song. I actually hate the chorus on this song with all the terrible vocal effects. The production just doesn't seem to fit her voice at all. Fall Apart, the song is just a really generic piano ballad until Tones' Dance Monkey comes out and kind of jump scares you. Just the Dance Monkey voice is terrible. And her vocals are actually just terrible on this song. There's some okay background vocals, but her vocals literally make this song terrible and ruin it all. The production is really generic, but Tone's voice is really the thing that ruins this whole song for me. And last but not least, Bars. Maybe not the worst song sonically, but this song is so cringe to me, and it's so bad to end off the album. Hate the production on this song, and the song is just a switch from the rest of that album. The lyrics are so cringe and sound terrible. She just doesn't fit this rap kind of sound at all, and her vocals suck, and the bars that are referenced to on the song are just terrible bars. I think I could make a better serviceable rap song that rivals this song if I just spent 2 weeks on it. This song is terrible and doesn't make any sense sound-wise on this album, and just is so weird as an ender. Wow, this album is actually terrible. The first couple of songs weren't good, but they were fine at least. The rest of the album literally could be some of the worst and most unlistenable music ever. Besides Tones' terrible vocals, there are some actual terrible production choices and some songs that make me want to throw up, as I was kind of dry heaving while listening to them. Some of the songs are extremely overproduced with random sound and vocal effects being thrown into the mix to spice up the song for no reason, and they make this songs sound that much worse each time. If you're fans of Tones and I, or at least Dance Monkey, maybe listen to like the super popular songs, because those songs aren't like that bad and they could sound good to you if you really like Dance Monkey, but the rest of the songs are just absolutely terrible. This album does not make sense, as I don't understand how some of these talented producers and engineers got together to make something like this and actually work with Tones and I, because everything that comes out of her mouth just sounds terrible. Either way, though, there's nothing about this album that's actually redeeming, and some of the genre changes between and even in the songs are jarring, and one of them actually jump scared me while I was listening to this album. Save yourself some time, don't listen to this album, and block Tones and I on every single social media platform, so you would never be tempted into listening to one of her songs again. Tones and I, welcome to the Madhouse. 0 out of 10. Last but not least, we have Mr. Opium himself, Mr. Ken Carson, with his album X. This is Fantano's most recent Zero, and this one was one of the ones I was kind of thrown off the most, but I kind of get it when thinking about Fantano. Intro, I think the song has an okay beat. Ken's flow is a little weird. I don't really think it works that well on this song. Ken's flow is okay, but I feel like the song is just pretty generic. He doesn't really do anything special on the song. His flow on this song is also really generic. I feel like the beat is pretty boring. The chorus is kind of bad too. Ken just doesn't sound good with the auto-tune slurring over the beat on this song. Gems, the song has a really similar beat
to the song before. I don't understand why they put both these songs back to back on the album. The first two lines on the song are just so cringe too. The production is also really generic, and I feel like doesn't do much special for me, or much anything special. And the only good line on this one that's like actually kind of funny is the "I mean bad bitch for lunch, my bitch look like Zendaya," which is actually kind of a good sounding line on the album, but the rest of it just doesn't sound that good. Nobody, I feel like this is another really generic song that has a boring beat. The production is so generic with the generic 808s. Ken is just kind of boringly slurring with auto-tune over the beat. I actually like Ken's picked up energy on this track, and I feel like there's a little energy. The beat is pretty generic, but I feel like it sounds a lot better than some of the other ones. MDMA, the beat is so much better than the former songs, and it brings some solid energy. Ken also just sounds a lot better as he sounds into this track, as he goes into this track. Ken's flow is actually pretty good, and I feel like it sounds a lot better than on most of the other tracks. I like Lone's verse, and I feel like his voice fits the beat a little bit better, and his flow on the song is pretty good as the verse begins, but it kind of gets a little bit worse as it goes on. X, I feel like this song really just loses the heat from the song before as it goes back to the slower beats, which just don't work that well with Ken. Whenever the song speeds up and Ken brings more energy, he just sounds much better. Please Don't Blow My High, I just love the beat on this song. I feel like it makes Ken sound so much better. I wish they could have mixed it where the beat was like a little bit more vocal, but I feel like Ken sounds pretty solid as he actually brings a little bit of energy. The beat is just so good, though, on this one, and could be one of the best beats I've ever listened to. It kind of just carries the song. Money Hunt, I just don't like how Ken sounds on this song, especially with his inflection on the Money Hunt part. The beat is okay, but to me, it really isn't anything special. South Beach, I really like the beat on this one, minus the 808s just being a little bit too hard. I feel like that's a common thing on this entire album. But Ken sounds just terrible on this song. I feel like the song doesn't develop at all, as Ken is like on the song for like a minute and 20 seconds, and it's a 2-minute song. Going Skits, the beat is actually pretty solid again, but I feel like Ken sounds pretty bad, especially with the terrible lyrics on this song. I actually really like the melody again, but the 808s try to do too much and kind of take over the melody. Same thing, the beat is okay, but Ken sounds terrible on this song. I don't know if the mix is just wrong at the beginning of the song, but he sounds better as it goes on, and there's just this wetness of the beat. It works okay at parts, but there are just some really abrupt switches where like Ken's voice will go from like far away to like right in between you. It's like a really abrupt jump scare, and it sounds really weird. Then we go to Freestyle 1. The production on this song doesn't have any like interesting things happening. I feel like Ken kind of just puts in no effort on this song, as he just does not sound interesting. Some parts he just slurs over the beat, which is kind of a common thing, and it just doesn't work at all. Freestyle 2, I feel like the Filthy production is pretty interesting, but I feel like the song, I just like it a little bit more because I've heard it so many times on TikTok, and it's not like a bad song, but I feel like it's kind of a mediocre song in terms of this album. Probably one of the higher ones up there, but it's still not that great. I think the Filthy beat just sounds weird and kind of not polished enough. There's some parts where it just sounds a little bit too like out there, and like it doesn't sound like refined enough, but I don't know, it still sounds cool. And Ken, while he does bring a much better flow on this song, it's a little choppy at points. F12, I feel like the song is pretty generic, and it starts and stops so quickly that I don't really think anything developed. Murder Music, I really like this song, and I feel like the beat is pretty solid, and the 808s work surprisingly well. Ken doesn't sound good on this song, but the trade-off in Alone works well, as I feel like they just flow right into each other, and they work well together. Delinquent, the beat is okay, but I feel like Ken doesn't sound right on the beat. Some of the beat doesn't really fit with him. I feel like everything that Ken says kind of works on the beat, and he sounds better than Homicide Gang for sure, but the whole song doesn't really work that well in my opinion. The little beat switch into the different 808s also caught me off guard. Get Rich or Die, I hate that start off the track, and Ken starts off with such a weird flow and actually a pretty solid beat. The song actually feels extremely long for a 2-minute song, and I feel like the weird vocal effects at the end of the song do not work at all. Turn Up, this is a really solid beat, and I feel like Ken actually has a little bit of energy on this song, so it works a little more. This is one of the better songs, and even though I've listened to this album before, I feel like this is kind of a new-ish sounding song, and I feel like it sounds pretty good. The end, the beat is pretty generic with the 808s, but the melody in the background giving the ambient sound is pretty good. Ken's flow at the beginning of the song sounds really good, but it gets a little bit worse as the song goes on before getting good again. So it kind of works in and out. The song is just pretty catchy, and it works well with the 808s, kind of drowning out the instrumental, even though I don't really like that. He puts in a solid performance on this album, and I feel like in general the album is just kind of held back by a lot of generic beats and performances that lack the energy that would kind of make these instrumentals really pop and sound good. Overall, songs like MDMA and Please Don't Blow My High really carried the album, and Ken doesn't even put the best performance on either of those songs, or the beat carries him on one and Lone puts in a better performance on the other one. While I feel like there's so much potential for Ken to do big things with his career, as he and Lone are kind of the poster child of this new dark trap rage style that they're coming out with, this album is clearly not really that interesting, as it's 20 songs and I feel like most of them don't really stand out on their own. If you could cut like half of these songs, I feel like it wouldn't feel as bloated and sound a lot better, but because of its size, it's kind of held back from reaching its true potential. I'm hoping Ken and Opium can come out with some more concise albums with a more refined rage sound and bring some more energy so he can just sound better in general. If he just brought a little bit more energy, I feel like this album could maybe be a little bit better and just sound that more like hype. Either way though, Ken Carson's X gets a 4 out of 10. In last place, we have Tones and Eyes, Welcome to the Playhouse. While it is a much better album than an album of all Dance Monkeys, it's still really not that much better than that, and it could be one of the worst albums of all time. Next up, we have Kid Cudi's Speedin Bullet to Heaven. So many of the songs have just no development and sound like they could be made by a high school band. Getting the bronze medal, we have Green Day's Father of All. There's so many cringe lyrics on this album, but the instrumentation is okay on at least a couple of the songs. Also, the fact that it's only 20 minutes gives it a big bump up. In second place, we have Chance the Rapper's The Big Day. This album is pretty terrible, but at least there's some competence parts where other people sound good. Chance has terrible lyrics throughout the entire album, though, which is kind of fun and funny at least. In first place, we have Ken Carson's X, which is just a mess of pretty mediocre rage songs with at least a couple standout tracks that I feel like really carried the album. This one really only got a 0 because I think Fantano kind of just hates this style of music. And it's just, to me, is a really mid album with a lot of super generic beats, but it's not like something that's extremely unlistenable and terrible.